The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, this is Kirsten Davis in Gulfport, Florida on a sunny Florida day, and it is 3 o'clock, and so we're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar on using technology to comment on papers. And what I want to do first is just introduce myself with a little picture of me. Here I am. With my husband at the Stetson Christmas party. That's the most current picture I had, so I thought I would show you that picture. And then to go ahead and tell you a little bit about your screen. This is the screen that you'll be seeing hopefully right now in front of you. The viewer window is on your left. That is where you'll see pictures coming up, and on the right is the control panel. And the control panel can be open and closed with the little arrow key there that you see that has the two little fast forward and reverse arrows. If you want to move that control panel out of the way so you can see better, that's how you do that. And then if you are having any trouble with your audio, that's how to take care of your audio setup. Just go in there and you can adjust the sound. If you have any questions for us today, you'll find that you can type in questions in the questions box, and we welcome all your questions. And in fact, in just a second, I'll be asking you a question to answer so that I can see that you are out there and listening. And then this control panel will auto hide itself if the auto hide is checked. So if you look right there, you can see a little check mark. If you uncheck that, that control panel won't, after 10 minutes, turn itself on and off. So that's the way to handle that. So I just want to make sure that your text box is working today. If you could please just let me know how the weather is where you are by typing the answer into the question box, and in a second I will give some feedback. Okay, I see a rainy and overcast, a sunny and cool. So a few people chiming in. Oh, here's a nice big yuck from Ann. Rainy and overcast. That's funny, Ann. Tammy says it's freezing by Los Angeles standards, windy and 68 from Hugh, although I don't know where he is. Catherine says glorious North Carolina spring day. Great. Great in Lynchburg, Virginia today. Windy in Washington, D.C. Sunny in Williamsburg, Virginia from Jenny. I was just there this summer, Jenny. That's a great place. So overcast in San Diego. Okay, so weather all over the place. Well, I'm having the same weather they are there in Virginia Beach, just a little warmer though, but some sun and some clouds, Janice here. Okay, well thank you. Thank you for chiming in. That's a big help to me in knowing that you're all out there and listening and can hear me and can see the screen. So let me just give you a couple updates on the webinar series. They're available for nonprofit, governmental, and educational institution members at our Advocacy Resource Center. And the directions to get to our Advocacy Resource Center are there on the screen if you want to do a screen print. Also, you'll get an email after this that tells you how to get to that site, but please feel free to share that information with your colleagues. They're free. You just create an account, register, and log in, and you can watch all of the conferences that we've done. The last conference for the season, the webinar season, is going to be in April. The date is not finally set for that yet, but it's going to be our annual scholarship highlights webinar, and trying to capture some new scholarship in the legal communication area broadly defined. We're hoping to have some pedagogical piece, an empirical piece, and a piece that has doctrine related to legal communication, and hopefully at least 4 pieces will be previewed there to kind of give you an idea of what new scholarship is going on this year in legal communication. And that will be the last one for the year, but then picking up in the fall, we'll start with another series, and hopefully we'll be able to announce those for you in August and September. So let's go ahead and turn to today's topic, which is using technology to comment on papers. Now, as we know, commenting on papers is important to all of us because it takes up so much of our time. People who have been writing about commenting have said things like that it is an effective pedagogical tool to write comments on papers. It's critical to the student's development as a legal writer. It is the ultimate means of one-on-one teaching. And finally, it's the best way of communicating with students about their writing. So we know from what we've studied that it's an important part of what we do. But commenting actually feels a little more like this because it is tedious to do when you're grading or giving feedback on so many different aspects of the paper. It can be tedious, particularly when the papers are the same paper over and over. As we know, it's time consuming, anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half or more per paper. It's deadline driven. If you're like me, you try to set a deadline for your students that you're going to hand back your papers, and you try to meet that so you maintain some credibility with your students. It's intellectually difficult. You know, it's not just a matter of correcting superficial mistakes, but it's also giving the students direction on how to improve, which can be difficult, how to better use a case or a statute and read it, and that can be really an intellectual challenge, particularly in the early going. As we noted, it's repetitive. You're doing the same kind of thing over and over again. And sometimes I find it emotionally taxing. That is, you know, it can be frustrating, it can be draining. As we know, when we see the haiku or the list of things I ate this week on the legal writing listserv, those are sort of responses to how emotionally taxing commenting on papers can be. So then the question I had when I got our panelists to speak today was, can using technology help commenting feel more like this picture? And that's what we're hoping to address today. But before we get started, I have a little poll for you just to kind of see where we all are with commenting. So the poll should be coming up on your screen right now. And the question is, I hope you can see it there, do you use computer technology for commenting? And it asks you to choose one. So I see that you all are voting. You're way ahead of me. Great. Okay, we're just about all voted. Wow, that's great. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close the poll. And I'm going to manage the poll here, and hopefully, hopefully you see my sharing of my results for you there. 71% of us use text-based commenting. Nobody's using voice commenting. Nobody uses text and voice together, obviously, and about 30% of us aren't using commenting at all, or technology for commenting at all. Great. Well, that gives our speakers some sense of the audience that they'll be talking to today. For those of you who use technology, can you type in your question box just so we can share some ideas about what you like about using technology to comment? So what do you like about using text-based technology to comment? Here we go. Judy says she can cut and paste. I'm a faster typist than a handwriter, says Wayne. Okay. Cut and paste, easier to read, neater. Jenny says it's faster. Richard notes the consistency of comments, streamlining comments, and providing more thoughtful comments, says Gina. More words in a smaller space. I like that, Hugh from Colorado Springs. Great idea. Can make modifications when I get frustrated and make an unkind statement. That's a good one, too. Faster and easier. Change my comments easily, says Anne. keeping an electronic record. So there's less tendency to lose something. Let me see if I can see that. Less tendency to lose I've lost it, lose the comments, I think. There we go. Great. So those are some great ideas. Students get papers back in private. That's a good one too. Okay. So, let me see if I did that right here. I'm trying to stop showing my poll results to all of you. Hang on just a second. There we go, there we go. Okay, so let's go ahead now then and hear from our speakers. And let me just quickly introduce them to you. Today's panelists are Ken Chestick of the Indiana University School of Law in Indianapolis. He's a clinical professor of law, and he is currently president-elect of the Legal Writing Institute and manager of the LWI listserv, which I think is his most important job. He's spoken on the topic of using technology for commenting at the Legal Writing Institute conferences in 2004 and 2008, and today he's going to be talking about text-based commenting. And Sabrina DeFabritas is a legal practice skills professor at Suffolk University Law School, and she has written and spoken on using technology to orally comment on papers. Her article, Can You Hear Me Now? Using voice comments to provide feedback on students' memoranda, appeared in the second draft in 2009, and she's going to be talking about voice commenting today. Okay, so let me turn the screen over to Ken, who is going to talk about text-based commenting. Ken, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, and I think we can now see your screen, Ken.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Okay, thank you, Kirsten. And thank you for the poll and the comments. I can take about the first 5 minutes of my presentation and throw it away, because all the comments about why people like e-commenting were the things I had kind of wanted to talk about for just a few minutes at the beginning. The fact that you can provide more detailed comments, more uniform comments, they're easier to read, all those comments that you were making during the comment period a moment ago, all great comments. And I also, it's good to know that most of you are already doing this. Those of you who aren't, get on board. It's really, it helps, I think, a lot. To me, it doesn't necessarily mean that my time for reviewing each paper is any faster. I'm not getting through the papers much faster. I am providing better comments, though, and probably more comments, more detailed comments, and more helpful comments. And also, the one comment I heard, which I also agree with, I'm sometimes, I don't know, I know most of you are not like me, and you're probably always upbeat and cheerful and happy and not stressed, but I sometimes get that way, and I know that if I'm doing a comment at 11:30 at night and I want to get to bed and I'm on my third cup of coffee, sometimes my comment comes out a little snippy. So the next morning I can go back and say, you know what, I better tone that down or change it, and I don't have to mess up the hard copy that I had written on. I can just go back and delete the comment, and it's much easier, and I can police myself a little bit better when I get in those bad places. So what I want to do today is talk a little bit about how I use electronic commenting, and maybe make your life a little easier. There are some shortcuts, some of which you know about. Cut and paste is one everybody seems to know about, but there are ways to make even that a little quicker and faster, and there's some other tricks I might be able to show you too, and I want to give you some examples on actual papers. So first comment I want to make, though, is I do most of my commenting in Word. Most of you who know me know that I despise Word. I'm a WordPerfect fan. But the problem is that students don't share that love with me, and they tend to hand in their papers in Word, and it's really impossible to convert a paper to WordPerfect, comment on it, and convert it back to Word. That screws up all the formatting. So I've learned to live with Word, but I also have to say this, that Word's comment feature is in fact better than WordPerfect's, because in Word, the comments can be displayed on the screen in a little bubble and printed that way, so the paper, if the student wants to print it out, they have a hard copy, they can see it on the screen, or they can see it on paper, and therefore it is a better feature, and it works pretty well. The screen that you see right now, you'll notice, is in Word 2007. Everything that I do in Word 2007 can be done in 2003, but since we're now in 2010, I thought I'd better show the most recent version that I have of Word, and I'll be showing you how to do things in Word 2007. One other comment, I know that some people, when they do comments, like to turn on the track changes feature of Word, and I have a rule that I don't do that because I never touch the student's actual words. I will put in lots of comments, but I will never edit or put any changes on the actual text. The reason for that, in my mind, is I don't want the student to misinterpret my role. My role is to comment and to advise and to teach. I am not their editor. And if I start making changes to their work, there may be a temptation for them to go up and simply say, all right, I accept all changes, and therefore I can hand it in with these changes accepted, and they haven't thought about why I made that change or what the purpose of the change is, so I make them do the typing themselves to incorporate all the comments that I've given them. So one other thing that I want to say about my personal habits is I find that I'm usually quicker if I can do everything from the keyboard. The more I have to move my hand away from the keyboard and onto the mouse and start clicking on things, that slows me down. So I have developed a number of keyboard shortcuts that I think help me tremendously speed up the process of adding comments. And I'm going to show you a couple of them here in just a second. A lot of people know the technique of having a list of standard comments, and the screen you're seeing right now is just a sample from a fall problem that I did last fall. It was an objective predictive memo, and these are some common comments that I ended up having to make on a number of papers. You can see it's a 5-page document of a whole bunch of different comments that I've made on papers. Some of them are substantive, people who have misinterpreted cases or haven't really read the case carefully. If I made a comment numerous times, I'll copy a good comment over to this sample sheet, and then I can cut and paste and put this back into somebody else's paper as a more substantive comment, and I think most of you know how to do that. A lot of people refer to this sheet as a list of macros, and that's technically not correct. These are not macros. These are simply standard comments. The term macro is actually a special term for a computer feature. And I liken a macro to a player piano. It's a player computer. It's actually simply records keystrokes and then plays them back for you at a particular moment when you ask it to play those keyboards back. I don't use a lot of macros, but there are 3 that I do use that I would like to show you and show you how to create these macros, because they help me move quickly through all the different features that I need to use. And one macro that I do use is a macro that helps me open a comment bubble quickly. Now, you know, if you want to open a comment bubble, what you have to do is you go to Review up here at the top, and then click New Comment, and the bubble opens, and then I can go back and type. And that's, again, I'm using the mouse to do all that work, and I'd rather not have to do that. So I have created a macro which does that for me by simply pressing Control-O. And I'm going to press Control-O right now, and there it is. I don't have to leave the keyboard. Let me show you how I do that. To record a macro, you go over to the View tab in the ribbon at the very top of the screen. You can see I'm clicking on View now. And I don't know why macro is part of the View menu. I think it's only because it doesn't fit any other category, and this was the one that had the most space left over, so they stuck macros on the View menu. But I can now go over to Macro, and click record, and it will ask me what do I want to record it to. I'm going to record it to the keyboard. I'm going to give it a name, and I'll just call this comment bubble, and I'm going to press keyboard, and it will ask me what key do I want it to record it to. And if I use Control O only because Control C means copy, so the next letter in comment is O. Control O is and you can choose whatever keyboard combination, keystroke combination you want. Control O, then assign, and I'll close this, and now you see my mouse pointer has a little tape recorder attached to it. That tells me that it's now recording this macro. So what I'm going to do now is go up to Review, click on New Comment, and that's all I need to do. I have to go back now over to the View, over to Macros on the right side of the ribbon, click Stop Recording, and now that's how every time I press Control O, a comment bubble will show up. If I want to now comment on a particular word or phrase, so for example, I want to comment down here on for the weaknesses, etc., I just highlight it, Control O, and it shows up in a comment. My hand does not leave the keyboard. Saves me a lot of time finding the mouse and navigating through all these different menus up at the top. So that's one quick macro. Another macro that I use quite a bit to navigate around in the document is something I learned from WordPerfect. Word does not have this feature built in, but it's easy to recreate. It's a feature that WordPerfect calls Quick Mark. It basically sticks a bookmark at the location of the insertion point. So if I have, now I'm going to click here in the middle of the screen. The insertion point is between the words use and the in my second comment. And if I know that I want to come back to that place quickly, I can put a quick mark there. And again, to record that, I would go over to the macro button again and press record macro. Give it the name quick mark, and this may reject it because I already have one recorded that way. Okay, and then I clicked on keyboard, and I use Control Q for quick mark. Again, that's the same key combination that WordPerfect used. I'm going to assign the quick mark macro to Control Q, assign, close this window, and now in order to I need to set a bookmark, so I go up to References, which is where, or is it under, where are they? Under, I always forget where they are because I only do this once. Thought I was under References. And here I am. Insert links. Okay, under the Insert menu, I'm sorry. Insert bookmark, and I'm going to type in here the word quick mark. That'll be the name of my bookmark. I'm going to add a bookmark, and that's all I need to do here. Go back up to the View screen, under Macros, Stop Recording. Now what I've done is I've actually placed a bookmark. You can't see it, but there's a bookmark there, and let me show how I can find it. If I go down to, so I've now moved my insertion point down into the Dominguez comment. If I wanted to find it manually, I would just simply go back to Insert, Bookmark. You can see there's a bookmark in this document called the Quick Mark. I can click Go To, close this, and you can see that my insertion point jumped back to where I placed the bookmark. If I want to move the bookmark to someplace else, I simply go down to some other place, Control Q, and the bookmark has been moved to that spot. Now, in order to find the bookmark more quickly, I have one more macro I record. Over to the View menu, Macros, Record Macro. This one I'm going to call Find Quick Mark. And notice that I'm not putting any spaces in here. If I put a space in there, I would get an error message saying you can't have spaces in a name for a macro. So Find Quick Mark with no space. Going to assign it to the keyboard. Yes, I already have it, but I'll show you how to do that. The new shortcut key, Control F for Find. Assign this to Control F. Close. And I go back again to Insert, Bookmark, go to, Cancel, and then I end recording the macro. And now I have Control F. We'll find the quick mark. So if you remember now, let me put the quick mark here down under Elegant Variation Held. Control Q will set the bookmark there. Now I want to scroll down a few pages, and I'm working down here. I want to go back to where I had originally put that bookmark. Control F pops me right back up to where I put the bookmark. It's a great way if I'm working on one part of a paper and I said, I thought he talked about this earlier, so I can bookmark the spot I'm reading, scroll back in the document, find where they talked about something earlier, remind myself what's going on there, and then I can go Control F to jump back to the space. And I said, you just talked about this back there, and I can move around very quickly inside the document. It's a very, very handy thing to have. Okay, now I want to show you also some shortcuts on how to do commenting. I have a student paper open on my computer. If you note down here in my tray, I have a sample student paper which I'll just click on, and this is a paper that a student handed in. I've eliminated the name. It's not a very good paper. It's a early in the semester kind of paper, so there's some things to comment on. And let me show you quickly how I do some commenting. But I wanted to point out that, again, I don't like using the mouse. I don't like having to hunt for the different, because I'm going to be switching back and forth between the comments and the student paper quite a bit. And rather than use the mouse to do that, I tend to do Alt-Tab, keyboard. Just press Alt and Tab at the same time. Oops. And you can see that everything that's open on my computer shows up. So I can simply keep clicking. If I want to go back to my standard comments, I highlight them, let go of the Alt key, and there it is. Then Alt-Tab one more time. I can go back to the student paper. Once again, my hands are not leaving the keyboard. I'm able to keep going pretty quickly. So I have on one screen my standard comments document is open. I'll move to the top of that quickly by pressing Control Home. And on the other screen, I have the student paper I'm working on. So I'm reading through it, and I discover that, for example, there's a Allwood manual violation here. Southern Second should have a space in it. So I can highlight that and make a comment. Control O pops open a comment, and I can type in incorrect Allwood format. I'll show you a quicker way to do that in just a second. Just for another example, one of my favorites, students don't like to say held over and over again, so they say stated or opined or felt or other words that mean held. So I'm going to highlight the word stated, Alt-Tab back to my standard comments. I have a standard comment for elegant variation down here towards the bottom. So what I'm going to do is click there and highlight this. And I tend to use Control-C rather than going up to the Insert tab and clicking. Again, keeping my hands on the keyboard, Control-C will copy that to the cache. Alt-Tab takes me back to the paper. Control-V, well, I'm sorry, now I have stated is highlighted. Control O to open up my comment bubble. Control V will paste that comment in there, and I'm done. That comment has been copied and pasted very quickly. Let's do one or two more. For example, here's in this case. It's another frequent waste of words. In this case, the student is simply idling. There's nothing substantive about those words, so I want to comment on that. I have a standardized comment. So I've pressed Control O to open up my comment bubble, Alt Tab back to my standard comments. And I have my comments alphabetized so I can find them quickly. And my comment is this and that. How to use the words this or that. Highlight that comment on my standard sheet. Control C to copy it. Alt Tab back. Control V to paste it in, and I'm done. Very quick to move things around. Let me just say one more sample. There's a number of things here I could show you in this paper, but let me give you one more example of a way I could use this to modify. I'm not stuck with those comments. I can modify them if I need to. For example, right here, the student has been talking about a case called Dominguez and was discussing one aspect of the Dominguez case. As it turns out, there are several things going on in the Dominguez case that I was hoping to see the student comment on. So Control O opens a bubble. Alt Tab back to my standard comments. Control Home to go to the top. Scroll down. Here's my Dominguez comment, and you can see it ends in mid-sentence. You only discuss blank. So what I'm going to do now is Control C, copy this comment, Alt Tab back to the student paper, Control V to paste it in, and what the student has done, the student has only discussed the abuse of a position of power, has not discussed the taking advantage of non-accessibility, so I can say you only discuss abuse of a position of power, and I can then edit this in any way I want to and change it to make whatever comments I need. Okay, so that's a quick demonstration of how I can do a lot of cutting and pasting very rapidly without ever taking my hands off of the keyboard because, as I say, for my own purpose, using the mouse slows me down. Okay, one other thing I wanted to show you. Remember up here I typed in incorrect all-word format. There's a shortcut for things like this that is very handy, and it's called Autocorrect. You can use Word to define certain kinds of typos as how it's going to correct typos. So, for example, if let me open up a blank document here. If I were to type and he, it automatically corrects to say and the. It knows that and he, or ant, A-N-D-T, each is a typo, and when I press space, it gets corrected. You can actually define how different typos get fixed, and then you can actually trick it into doing things more than just a typo. IAF is a typo. What does it mean? It means incorrect all-word format. BB is a gun. No, it's a blue book. All kinds of PPP is a pinpoint page citation needed here. These are quick little things that you need to keep in your mind, but if you have just a few of them that you're going to use all the time, define certain little keystrokes as typographical errors, which get expanded into this, and it saves you a lot of time. Let me show you how to do that. In Word 2007, you need to go up to the Office button at the very top, and this is not easy to find. Word is not the most intuitive program. Click on the Office button, and all the way down in the bottom of this box under Word Options. Again, this is very well hidden. Word Options, and then it's under Proofing. You're digging pretty deep to get to this, but here it is. Autocorrect Options change how Word corrects and formats text as you type. Click Autocorrect Options, and here is where all of those typos that it's corrected, and there's a lot of them that are built into the program, but you can add things. Up here where it says replace text as you type, replace, type in the typo, and then type in the text you want to include. For example, you can see on this very first screen I have defined comma ND to be a typographical error that gets that really says comma needed here or comma unnecessary here. So if I go back to my blank document and type comma ND space, it gets corrected and says comma needed here, period needed here. And all of my little typos that I've included here, and most of these are built in with Word, as you can see as I scroll through them. These are the kinds of things that get automatically corrected. Let me see if I can find one of the ones that, let's find the PPP that I showed you. There it is. I typed in PPP in this window, and then it expands into pinpoint page citation needed here. And you can define as many of these as you want, and when you're done, just click OK, OK. And so, for example, comma ND space, comma needed here, period ND space, period needed here. I don't have to type all those words. I can type 3 letters, and it is expanded into the next into the text that I've defined. So those are a couple of quick shortcuts. I'm going to Alt-tab back to my sample student paper and show you how it works. This SO period 2D is a mistake that's been made several times. And here's another problem. This is incorrect short form. And that's one of my typos as well. I can click up here. You don't need the initial page cite for this, so I can open up a comment bubble. ISF is incorrect short form citation. It saves me a lot of time having to type all those extra words. So that's an example of how to use autocorrect to save yourself some typing. And that's pretty much all I wanted to cover right now. So Kirsten, if you want to take it back.
Ken, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We had a couple questions that I think are probably easiest for you to address now.
Okay.
Catherine asks, regarding the specific comments, do you read several papers and prepare your comments list before you begin marking, or do you develop the comments as you go?
It's a combination. There are some comments. Let me go back to my comment list. Some of these, for example, the comment on clearly, I've used that comment on many, many papers, many, many times, and that might be one that I'll pull up from last semester's comment sheet. Dominguez is one I didn't realize till I'd read a few papers that Dominguez was that people were not using the Dominguez case as thoroughly as they could have. So I wrote a comment on one paper, and what I did actually for that one was I wrote the comment on the student paper and then copied it and pasted it back to my standard comments sheet so I could save it for future use. And then I would then be able to use the same comment on future papers. This helps standardize so the students are all getting the same kinds of comments, and actually sometimes exactly the same comment. It makes the same more uniform. So this list will expand as I work through it. I may be through 5 or 10 papers before I realize that I'm seeing the same thing over and over again. So I'm constantly adding to the list of standard comments.
More, Ken, before we go to Sabrina. One of the questions is, and maybe we'll try to get to some more of these at the end, but one for now, it's a good question. Are you reading a hard copy and commenting on the screen, or are you reading on the screen? Do you find it too hard to read on the screen or too time-consuming to switch between the two? What's your practice?
My practice is I read it on the screen. A lot of times these papers never hit paper. They submit them electronically. I read them electronically. I comment on them electronically. I submit them back electronically, never killing a tree in the process. And it's not just killing of trees. It's actually, I think, more efficient. I have a hard time going from hard copy than scrolling through and finding that same spot on the screen. It's more efficient for me to read it on screen. I'm used to it. I can do it on airplanes. I can take it with me without having a stack of papers to carry around. So I almost never print out these papers on hard copy.
Ken? Well, we'll go ahead now and go over to Sabrina. Can you hear me, Sabrina? Sabrina? It's showing that she's here, but I don't see her. Sabrina, are you with us? Ken, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, Sabrina says that she can hear me, but she can't, we aren't getting any audio for her. Okay, if everyone will just hang on a minute, I'll see if I can't get this solved.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
There we go. We can hear you now.
Yay. Okay.
Good, good. I was getting concerned. Okay, so Sabrina, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about voice commenting?
Okay, great. Now that you can all hear me, I presume you can all see my screen as well now. So we can talk a little bit about voice commenting. Based on the results of the poll that started off this webinar, my goal in the next 15 minutes or so is basically to show you how easy voice commenting can be. And my start of that is to show you the opposite of voice commenting, which is the general sort of feedback that many students get, a cumulative comment sheet along with their memos. And I would be hard-pressed to find any first-year legal writing student, perhaps even a second or third-year student, who doesn't have at least an initial shock of intimidation from a lengthy, potentially multi-page comment sheet. That was really one of the reasons why I decided to transition from written comments, and I do a bit of a hybrid, so you'll see that in a moment, but mainly to transition from significant written comments to voice comments. And before I show you examples of that, I'll give you a little bit of a background of how we grade papers here at Suffolk, or the types of papers that we have. In the fall semester, we focus on objective writing, and we have a first draft and a final draft of an objective memo. They're both graded. In between that first draft and final draft, the students have a conference with the professor. The student will hand in memo, professor will provide feedback, and then there will be the conference, and then the students will do the rewrite. In the spring, same process, draft, final version with comments, a conference with the professor in between. And when I was providing written feedback, I was finding that every time the student came into the conference, I wasn't really saying anything different than I had in the written comment, but somehow in that conversation with me during that conference, the student was appreciating and understanding a particular flaw in their paper, whether it be an explanation of a precedent case or a rule synthesis flaw. Whatever it may be, they were understanding it in a way that they had failed to do so based on the voice comment. So initially, that is why I decided to try audio comments. And this is my second full academic year of using voice comments, and I've been quite successful. The students have been extremely receptive, and each conference has been far more smoother and just more about getting the paper to the next level, as opposed to, well, what did you mean by this comment? Well, what does this mean? I was getting a lot of those questions earlier when I was using written comments. So let's take a look. I explained just a couple of minutes ago that okay, there we go. You should now all be seeing my screen on the first draft of a student's persuasive memo. So what we have here is a lot of what Ken just showed us, using comments. And I do use bubble comments, although I've never used those macros, and I'm really excited to use them because typing the same thing over and over or going back and cutting and pasting does get a little bit old. So this is a first draft of a persuasive argument section. And you will see that some of my comments are insert defendant here. But some of my comments are listen to voice comment on addressing, listen to voice comment 1, addressing your first thesis paragraph. This tells the student, go take your flash drive, plug it into your computer, and listen to the first comment. A 10-page paper will result in anywhere from 10 to 15 comments, I would say, generally. Basically, some of the smaller citation, cosmetic feedback I provide in written form in the bubbles, changing the passive voice to the active voice, particular problems with citation, comments of being a bit more concise in their language. Or, not just comments about do this better, comments about this is well done, you did well here. And then later on I might reference a case where they need a clearer explanation of a precedent case. I might say, go back and see comment 6 on Hathaway. You explain that case clearly. You want to do so with explanation of other cases later on in your memo. So, you will notice that with this first draft, I have 2 forms of comments. Some giving suggestions on how to correct certain grammatical, cosmetic things. But the big picture ones, listen to voice comment 1. It's going to address your thesis paragraph. Later on, we have listen to voice comment 2. That's going to address your narrow rule. Later on, we have another one I believe I have in this example for you. Okay, listen to voice comment 3, discussing the application of the Hathaway reasoning. This is what students will get. I have my students submit their papers electronically, but however, I do kill a bit more trees than Ken does because I hand back their papers in hard copy and in color. So exactly what you're seeing on this screen is what the student gets back. And along with that, they get a flash drive with the voice comments. Now let me show you how easy it is to create the voice comment. What we're going to do is create a folder. We're going to create a folder on our desktop for our, and in that folder, I've called this one webinar student folder. You are going to, within that one folder, create an individual folder for each of your students. These are my 4 fictitious students. So, you're then going to take your voice recorder, and we use the Sony Digital Voice Editor. It's a, think, telemarketer headset. It's pretty much what it looks like. And some software. What I do is I record the comments individually on my software, and I have 4 folders to do so. So I could do comments for student A, student B, student C, student D. That's the most capacity it has to hold. Then I'd have to delete them and go back and upload them and do the next 4 students. Now, I've consistently used this digital voice editor software by Sony. My understanding from our IT department is that there are several other comparable software and voice recorders out there that are just as efficient and relatively inexpensive. This is not an inhibitively expensive software program and recorder that your school would need to purchase. So cost shouldn't be an issue in transitioning from voice comments, written comments to voice comments. So what I've done is I've marked up my student's paper, indicated where certain comments are, and the comments are individual. So if we go back to this student here that we were looking at earlier, comment 2 is specific to the student. Comment 1 is specific to the student. They're not generic Not that there's anything wrong with that, and that would save me a whole lot of time. But they're individual comments. This takes about just as long as written comments. You won't save any time doing personalized voice comments, but I will tell you that for some reason students appreciate them on a different level. There's something that they accept them as their own, and they're like, on my comment you said this, and they really do appreciate them and get a lot out of them. So I guess those are some really some positive feedback that I've received from the students that I'm happy to pass along to those listening. So going back, I made the edits on the paper. I recorded the comments. I then uploaded my comments, and let's say these comments are for Abner Adams, okay? So I've got my webinar student folder here that I just shown you that I created on my desktop, and I want to give these 5 comments, again, generally for about a 10 or so page paper, it'll be 10 to 15 comments. But for purposes of today, I've recorded 5, and I want to give these to Abner. So we'll open Abner's folder. That's that exact folder that we saw, and I will click and drag. And you will see it will just take a few seconds to transfer them from the recorder that I recorded them on to Abner's folder that's now sitting on my desktop. Well, it's a little bit slow, but some of these are some old comments, and they're a little bit lengthy. But as we wait, let me just show you, well, we can do that later actually. Let's talk about how much the students like the voice comments. They come into their conferences after listening to the comments, and they've internalized them. They've put them on their iTunes, which is a little freaky to me sometimes, I'll be honest, because I envision them being on the treadmill at the gym and suddenly my voice coming on after whatever music they were listening to. But they tell me they put them on their iPods. They listen to them as they're commuting back and forth from school. They can listen to them in the library. They can pretty much listen to the comments wherever they want. Many students type up the comments. Many students write the comments on their memos that I've handed back to them, and then come into their conference having implemented those comments already, showing me a redraft of a particular section that I commented on, which wasn't as common in the past when I was using written comments to provide feedback. So I've had a lot of success, and the students really do seem to get a lot out of the voice comment. One other thing I want to mention now is with the voice comment, it's really sort of, you're having a conversation with the students. Much like I'm talking into the mic now for this webinar, that's exactly how I speak to the students in a conversational tone. And it gives me the ability to say, in redrafting this section, why don't you go take a look at the handout or the PowerPoint presentation from the class we had on synthesizing the narrow rule or drafting a narrow rule persuasively. And it gives you sort of more flexibility in referring students to particular handouts than you would traditionally, particularly if you were still using handwritten comments to provide feedback. That being said, here we go. The My Voice comments are now in Abner Adams' folder. So I can close out of here and go back to Abner's folder, and there they are. And that's exactly what the student will see, because what we're going to do is this. We're going to take a flash drive, and
Sabrina, I think we've lost you. I think we've lost your audio, Sabrina. Ken?
I hear you, but I do not hear Sabrina
Okay.
either.
Well, while she's trying to restore her audio, her little audio button has gone off for us. I thought maybe we could get back to a couple of the questions that you were asked. I sent you a couple, but I will read them to you. Uh, One person has asked a question, hang on just a second, about, I can see her trying to get back on, so we'll just let her do that. One of the questions you had, Ken, for you was from Kelly. And Kelly asked about the dangers of over-commenting.
Yes.
Yes. Did you see that question? Kelly asked, do you feel you over-comment? I often note an error and comment to fix throughout, and do you have a danger of commenting too many times on the same error with computer-based commenting?
There is a tendency to comment more. I think I do give more comments now than I did before, but I tend not to fix every instance of the same mistake. What I'll do if I see the student is making the same mistake over and over again, I will put the first comment in, here's a mistake, here's a problem. The second time I see it, I will add another comment saying, I notice you've made the same mistake before and again in the paper. I will stop commenting on it here. You should go back and find every instance of this mistake and fix it yourself. So I do not, again, I'm trying to make sure that the student does not think of me as the editor and that they've got to process my comments and think about them, and that saves me a lot of over-commenting. I'm just commenting on the first or second instance of a particular mistake.
Okay, and I see a question here from Tammy, and she's asking, and if we have any answers from our audience too, that would be great. But Ken, for you, has Ken or anyone else who switched from written to typed comments seen any changes in the student evaluations of their comments? Ken, you want to get us started? And if you all have any thoughts, you can type those into the question box, and I'll share them with the group.
My answer is going to be from a Steve Martin sketch on Saturday Night Live. I forget. I don't know. I've been doing electronic commenting so long, I can't remember what the comments were like before I started doing it. So I really don't know. The students don't really comment on my comments. They comment on other things about me, but I've never seen a comment on my evaluations about my commenting style. I can't answer that question. I'm sorry.
Okay. Anybody else out there have any thoughts for us on any changes they've seen? Okay. I'm waiting to see if we have any. One person says they don't think they've seen a change, but tends to do a mix of handwritten and electronic comments on the paper. Tammy, so there's one answer from the audience for you.
Okay. We seem to have lost Sabrina altogether.
I think we have lost her altogether. Well, here's what I'll do, those of you who had questions for Sabrina, because they were very good questions. What I will do is I'll forward those on to her to let her know that you have those questions, and maybe she can answer them individually, because we're just about at the end of our time. Does anyone else have questions for Ken?
I had one private question from Gail about what keystroke did I use to paste with. It was Control V as in Victor. It's like an inverted caret to stick it back in at that spot. So in Control V was the keystroke that I used to insert what I pasted into the cache.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, well, I am so sorry, everyone, that we lost Sabrina. Occasionally that happens. This is the first time that we've lost someone altogether, but hopefully you got a sense of the kinds of things that she was showing you with respect to voice commenting, and I'm sure she would be open to individual questions from you as well. And so I just appreciate everyone attending. This will be posted on our website so that you can listen to those parts. There is a short survey at the end when you log off, so please answer those questions. Ken, thank you so much for attending with us, and I'll thank Sabrina from afar, and thank you all for coming and sharing part of your day with us. Have a great day.